welcome to this week's book club episode for Star Wars Catalyst by James Luceno. If you're not familiar with the series, we're going through this book a couple of chapters at a time to take an in-depth look at what's going on in the pages. We're actually almost done with this book, so if you want to go ahead and check the description of this video, you will find a link that will take you back to the beginning of this series or let you see the other books we have done as a part of this book club. But with that, we're going to discuss chapters 25 and 26. It's my favorite video in the series, always, because I get to say penultimate is our penultimate episode, our penultimate chapters, as we draw near to the end of Catalyst. So, chapter 25 is the longest chapter title to date in the book, as near as I can remember, and it's, quote, the still point in the turning world. The still point in the turning world. So we open up and Tarkin is still on Salient. He's still trying to bring the system in, rein it in, bring it under control. Salient is now at the point where, at least I think it's Salient 2, but one of the planets is self-destructing. They are burning things, blowing things up, and leaving. They're like, you know what, if the Empire wants the planet, they can have it, we're gonna wreck it on our way out, and then yeet off somewhere else. Tarkin either he says to him that they're surprised that they're not melting the polar ice caps at this point, and I think someone says that to Tarkin, and Tarkin says that they probably will soon, but it might be the other way. But it shows just how intense this is. The idea that if they'd rather see the planet get wrecked than the Empire have it. Because, of course, the Empire's going to wreck the planet anyway. They're going to mine it to oblivion, as we've seen on other worlds already. So they're kind of like, well, if they're going to do this, we might as well wreck it for them so that they don't even get any materials out of it. It's the kind of throw enough dirt analogy. And it's certainly something kind of intense, because there's a part of me, I don't know that I could ever do this. Because, you think about, even if they're leaving the planet, there's still ecosystems, there's still wildlife. I can't imagine every human is actually able to escape. That somewhere, someplace in an entire planet, there must be a family or a person that can't get on a ship to get out. So somebody is getting hurt, some kind of innocence is getting hurt by the quote-unquote good guys. Even though the argument is they're going to get hurt anyway, at least this way it keeps things out of the hands of the Empire. And I find this to be an interesting discussion. It is an interesting way to look at things, because in the long term, in the grand galactic scale, wrecking the planet so the Empire can't get what they want out of it, in theory, helps other worlds, right? Like, you are keeping resources out of the hands of the Empire. But what is the cost? The cost is you. The cost is what you are doing to your own homeworld, and what does that do to you internally? And I can't imagine it leaves you unaffected, especially considering, from my mind, there's no guarantee that you aren't actually stopping the Empire from getting what they want. The Empire doesn't want forests, it doesn't want lumber, it wants the minerals that are underneath all of the things that are getting destroyed. And something the Empire can easily get to and have enough resources, and even if you stop them from having one planet, there's a lot of planets out there. So, are you choosing to engage in the kind of behavior the Empire does so the Empire doesn't get it? But at the same time, it is a bold move, and it does show determination, and it does show how serious they are, and that idea of, if they throw some dirt, are other people going to throw dirt too? And does this become something, a wave of something to stand up against the Empire? And so it's one of those kind of butterfly effect moments of, where is it going to go from here? And I think it's a part of Saw Gerrera's character too. Even though we're seeing a lot of this from Haas's perspective, Saw is there, and it does show the difference between Saw and what eventually becomes his partisan rebels versus the actual rebellion against the Empire, and the difference in philosophies between the two. This chapter ends with Tarkin kind of finding the smuggler base on one of the worlds in the system and choosing to target it because he wants to bring the roof down. Which is ultimately what happens, but we'll come to the aftermath more than see that actual happening. Next we go over to Galen, and Galen is wrestling with a problem, but he doesn't know what the problem is. He's used to kind of tossing and turning and trying to figure something out, but here he doesn't even seem to know what it is he's trying to figure out. He's been dealing with this since he sent his findings to Krennic, that kind of moment we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and he still hasn't heard back, and it's been driving him nuts. He describes how he has a rare moment with Jyn in the room, that he doesn't really connect with her as much as he used to. He sees her consumed in a drawing, that she's obsessed by this piece of artwork that she's doing. It felt like him, in a way. You know, he gets so obsessed with his calculations and his equations and his solving things, and see Jyn also be obsessed with something, even if it wasn't the same kind of thing. You know, there was kind of a connection there. And she's drawing, and we find out that she's drawing something from her favorite bedtime story, this Octave Stairway or whatever. It's ultimately about a character who's lost and trying to find his way home and going through levels and levels to find their way back. But she appears to draw the hero of the story not as the actual character from her favorite bedtime story, but as Galen. Galen kind of wonders, you know, is she doing that on purpose? Is he seeing it? Is she doing it? But the idea is Jyn as a young child. I mean, she's probably just above toddler at this point, right? She can talk, but complex conversations are not really where she's at. And so rather than be able to say, hey, Dad, are you okay? You know, she draws this picture of her dad being the person who's lost, trying to find his way back home. And it moves Galen deeply, and he scoops Jyn up and apologizes for not really being a good dad to her all of this time. And I think the idea is what Galen was wrestling with. The problem he couldn't solve was him, that he had lost himself and lost his way, and it was this really beautiful moment between him and his daughter that brought him back. I love seeing this, especially then looking into Rogue One, where it won't be long from where we are in the timeline now to where he ultimately has to leave Jyn because Jyn goes off with Saw, and he doesn't see her again until the platform where he dies. And I also think of the message when Jyn sees Galen's message, and it's really his message that inspires her to hope and fight again, you know, that down the road she as an adult will have lost herself and will need to come home, and it's a message of love and encouragement from her father that helps her find herself. And to see this case of these two people who deeply, deeply love and care for each other, and obviously a parent-child relationship is intensely powerful but also wildly complex. And to see a moment that will lead into other moments about how they are often away from each other and separated from each other both physically and metaphorically, but often both help each other find their way back. Next we see Krennic, and Krennic is basically drunk with power. Like, he feels like he's building his own world more than he's building a weapon. You know, this is the point where he is outsmarted Tarkin, he's manipulated Galen, he has done all of these things, he's moved up in position, he's gotten the ear of Mas Amedda, he's got the Emperor listening to him, he's done everything he's wanted and outplayed absolutely everyone, and he is just at the height of everything that he could want. And the one variable, the one thing he still has is Lyra. Is what if he overplayed his game with Lyra and pushed her a little too far, was a little bit too intense about it. And so that's the one kind of thing he's got left, and so he decides that he wants to pay the Ursos a visit. We then go back to the Ursos. Galen walks in to talk to Lyra, and Lyra starts saying, hey, you know, I got those transcribes done. And he's like, I don't remember asking you to transcribe anything. And she's like, here, look. And she's like written a note that she hasn't actually sent. There's no, you know, receipt of it because it's just typed somewhere. It's like living in your Twitter drafts. He looks at it. They see they need to go outside. And she starts telling him of her concerns, that they're under surveillance, that Krennic is watching them. She says that Krennic came to talk to her and that she felt, you know, scared. Galen's asking questions and saying, you know, do you really think Krennic is out to get us? But he isn't shutting her down. He's taking part in the conversation. And at a certain point, Lyra's like, you know, I really thought I'd get more pushback from you. And he says, no, that he has his own suspicions. And now they're waiting because Lyra has sent her friend to Hypori and some of the other planets where things have gone on, and they're going to wait and see what her readings say before they decide, what they're gonna do from here. Now, for the title of Still Point in a Turning World, I think what's going on here is these are all points of characters kind of reflecting back on what's happened as things move around them. Tarkin is taken in the situation at Salient. Galen is aware now of the problem he's been. He and Lyra are reconnecting. Krennic is looking at all that he's amassed, yet everything's still kind of moving. So it's that kind of quiet, oh, this is what's going on moment for the characters, which takes us into chapter 26, which is called Exponents. So we open up with Haas. Haas is waking up in a med bay. So basically he almost died in the attack we didn't see on the smuggler base. Tarkin was able to find him. Haas thinks that he might be hit with some kind of truth serum or something because he's talking quite a bit, which is not what he intended to do, but we never really get to find out if that's true or not. And Tarkin's basically trying to get to his motives for why he was doing what he was doing. And Haas thinks what he's saying is simple enough. Yeah, he worked for Krennic, but really he had this bodyguard babysitting thing with this wife of this scientist, and that changed his heart. And then Tarkin's like, wait, what scientist? And he explains how he's connected to the Ursos, not realizing that the Ursos would be really important to Krennic's plans also, or to Tarkin's. And so then Tarkin is like, oh, so the Ursos, and basically tells Haas that they've both been played by Krennic, and he has a chance to redeem himself and get unplayed by Krennic. And Haas worries that he's done something absolutely horrible to put Lyra and Jyn in danger, because he doesn't really know Tarkin's plans for them. We go back to the Ursos. Galen and Lyra get the report from Lyra's friend, and Galen looks at what's going on these worlds away from just what Krennic is saying is going on, and Galen realizes that he's been lied to, that a lot of the damage that he's been told is being done by anarchists is either intentional to cover things up, or a result of things with his experiments going wrong because they're trying to weaponize his research. I feel like at some level he had to know that weaponizing was what was happening, and that was part of why he didn't want to give Krennic the information he gave him a few chapters ago, and the personal betrayal he was doing to himself. When he did so, he had to know that in some way things were going to the military, but I don't know that he fully recognized the scope, and now he does. And so he's getting very, very afraid about what's happening. They're angry, they're distraught. He knows that he has friends out there who are going missing because of this, and then they find out that Krennic is coming for dinner. And they decide to share suspicions but underplay it and let him think he's convinced them. So Galen's like, well, rather than outright lie and be like, everything's fine, let's tell Krennic, hey, we're just worried and stuff, but not give him all of the information, basically, and then that would let Krennic think that he's convinced them and talked them into something, and they're gonna go from there. But that's chapter 25 and 26 for next week. Let's read 27 and 28, and that will finish the book. So we will finish the book next week. The suggestions I had last week are narrowed down. A lot of you really want Dark Disciple by Christie Golden, which is a novel about Quinlan Vos and Asajj Ventress based off of unused scripts from the Clone Wars, and it's a great read. I've been meaning to read it for other content on the channel anyway. Be super happy to cover it. Also, a lot of votes for doing Dooku Jedi Lost, which if we did Dooku Jedi Lost, we would do both Jedi Lost and Master and Apprentice, I think, which would be another good pair of things to read, because both Cavan Scott and Claudia Gray are writing for the High Republic, which comes out starting in the new year, in theory, as long as it doesn't get pushed back again. Those are the two paths, either these two together or Dark Disciple is where I'd like to go from here. So with that narrowed down list, let me know if you guys have a strong feeling on what you would like to see next. If you're not already, please follow us on all of the socials, and I will talk to you guys next week for the end of the book.